Welcome to another Alchemy Monday. I'm joined by my co-host, Eros Up. Eros, tell them where they can find you.
Hi, Headless. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Eros Up. You can find me on YouTube at Eros Up, and you can find me on Twitter at Eros to Ethos. I'm a Hellenistic, archetypal, and functional astrologer, and I dive deep into metaphysics. I actually just announced some astrology readings. So if you are interested in any synastry or transit readings, or even just general birth chart consultations, you can find that on my Twitter.
Awesome. And she's good. She's good. So you need an astrology reading, that's who you go to. Well, let's get right into the Alchemist Handbook. We're on the introduction to alchemy. So what is alchemy? This is the first and most vital question to be answered before a study of the following pages should be undertaken. This question can be answered to the satisfaction of the inquiring mind, but all careless paging through this book will be to no avail. If the reader has no previous knowledge of alchemy and, moreover, no knowledge through conscious study concerning mysticism, occultism, or related subject, the answer to the above question will mean very little. What then is alchemy? The raising of vibrations. This is the most important part, right? The raising of vibrations, right? For this reason, it is wise not to attempt to experiment with the laboratory outlines that follow. These experiments are only for those who have spent considerable time in the Spagyric research and who have proven to themselves that an honest endeavor has prevailed, that this same endeavor still motivates their true search for the highest arcana, the lapis philosophorum, and all students of alchemistical literature have come to realize the exact process for the opus magnum has never completely been revealed in simple language or put into print. They will appreciate the fact that here is given a detailed description of the lesser circulation. So this is the plant stone is the lesser circulation, right? In alchemy, there are the lesser and the greater circulations. The former pertains to the herbal kingdom, and the latter to the most coveted of them all, the mineral metallic realm. A correct understanding and not just knowledge of the herbal process will open the gate to the great arcanum. Months and years of experimentation in your alchemical laboratory will prove the truth of this statement. The fact that alchemy is a life's work will be accepted by those who have spent months and years behind books and retorts. It is in this significant fact which provides our Spagyric art with such an armor that no materialist can pierce it. If it were not for the cleansing, purging, and aging of the alchemist to be over a great length of time, like the subjectum he is working with, how could it be kept from the profane and the unworthy? Only that which has stood the test of fire has been purified. That there is still a cloak of secrecy covering alchemical processes, and that this must yet remain. So all will have to be accepted by all aspiring alchemists, for personal greed has no place in alchemy. The aim of all true adepts is to help relieve a suffering mankind in its physical and spiritual misery. A non-acceptance of this excludes one automatically from the circle of adepts. Just stop there for a minute. So, what do you do before you're doing alchemy? And this is kind of up to the alchemist, while at the same time being entirely necessary for the entire art. You've got to mix your meditations, your praises, your prayers, and your workouts with the process of alchemy so that you are experiencing the purification through fire as well as your subjectum, right? So whatever you're working with in the alchemical laboratory must kind of be reflected in yourself. You're doing the process together. And this is where a lot of what Carl Jung talks about alchemy with, which is the idea that we're becoming these archetypal forms in an alchemical fashion. Now, the ancient alchemists would meditate on the woodcuts that everybody knows about alchemy. You see these grand woodcuts showing mystical beings and, laboratory equipment with fires and strange things happening. You've got the green lion eating the sun, right? These are the mystical aspects of alchemy that should be meditated on before the work is undertaken. So, you've got to have a workout routine, you've got to have a meditation routine, and you've got to incorporate that into your laboratory work. Now
A
that's
workout routine?
right.
Did they talk about that in the book, like examples of workouts?
No, they
No.
don't.
Okay.
What they do is they're more like prayer and fasting and all the rest of this stuff, but what you're trying to do is you're trying to increase the vibration, right? And so increasing the vibration includes the purifying fire, right? You've got that purifying fire within yourself. And by working out, you're getting rid of weakness and you're increasing vibration so that you can become something different. So I like to use workouts as opposed to all the prayer and fasting and everything else. I can do that as well, but the workout routine is something also vital to my process of alchemy. Now I'm focused on praying to Apollo and the muses, right? So you've got the 9 muses and you've got Apollo at the center. And the idea is that the divine inspiration comes through Apollo and the muses. So as you're going through the work, you're going to want to have a prayer or a connection to the divine so that you can expand past what the alchemical literature has told you to do, right? Because you're not just taking in their ideas, but you're also applying them to your work. And you've got to have that inspiration to get there. So I think Apollo and the muses would provide that epiphany that gets you to the point of understanding the full art. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, because I think Apollo is pretty rich in alchemical allegory. So just like the consciousness meeting matter, like him and Daphne.
Yes.
Yes.
So Daphne is where we get the idea of the wreath, right? Because Daphne became a tree. There you go.
Yeah.
You had one.
I do. Some bay laurel.
Awesome. Yeah. So the laurel tree is what Daphne became. And this represents the eternal seeking nature of Apollo. He's constantly seeking after something else. He's challenging his mind, he's challenging his body, he's challenging himself to achieve more. And so, as Daphne is running away, she gets transformed into a tree, and then he sort of wears that as his crown, as sort of like this constant striving, sort of goal oriented kind of deity. It's a lot less about debauchery and things like that as his counterpart Dionysus would be.
Yeah, and I think that Daphne can even be an allegory for prima materia.
In some ways, like as she's transferring over to the tree form, it's sort of like from the spirit because she was a dryad into a tree. So this is like from formlessness into form, and so
Mm-hmm.
that laurel idea sort of represents the mastery of form. And Apollo is the Lord of Light, right? So it's also knowledge and prophecy and psychic ability and all the rest of that stuff is all encompassed there. And also he's the Lord of Music, right? So his lyre, his harp is sort of the chord that all things resonate to. So they were very clear on that. That was kind of a Pythagorean sort of mixture in there, but he's also the Lord of Music. He was taught music by Hermes, right? The guy who goes between all borders. And so in essence, it was like, this is the thing that's going to go between all planes of existence, and you're going to appreciate it. Now, also on the materials list from last time, we got Spagyrics. Right, so this one's a pretty good one. It's by Manfred M. Eunice, and we're going to start at the forward. So this is the quote at the beginning. The vast field of Spagyrics presents itself rather like a mosaic that only slowly completed by the collaboration of the reader. I am honored to write this forward to the new edition, so present the key alchemical works in the 20th century, Spagyrics by Manfred Eunice. This book was translated from German, Paracelsus, lots of German words, and published in English in 1985 under the title The Practical Handbook of Plant Alchemy. So we've got a lot of handbooks here. What most impressed me when I first read the book 22 years ago, and what continues to impress me, is the generosity and directness of the material. As you read, reread, begin to work with your way through the process given, you will begin to see the hand of a very skillful teacher. The book outlines a coherent and true path, starting with the basic theories and simple, effective processes. Manfred Eunice builds to more complex spagyrical processes, such as the circulatum minus, or the lesser circulation, as we were just talking about. The circulatum minus is a solvent that can separate out rather quickly the principles of any fresh herb. He shows clearly how to obtain the unusual liquid using the techniques given in a 17th century text. So, I mean, he goes into the plant stone. The minor circulation is the plant stone. Once you have the plant stone, you can combine that with any other plant of the similar species in the same circulation apparatus, like the soxolite extractor, and instantly receive the extraction from the plant instead of having to go through the entire process of heating it up, like we're about to see, because I've got a video of it for you guys. So qualified is Manfred Eunice, perhaps the first to recover this process and successfully make the circulatum minus, which indeed does some rather remarkable things. This book then gives a complete and interesting primary text on working with wine. By the time you have worked your way through the collaboration with the process given, you are more than ready to venture alone into the vast field of alchemy. And from this work with grace, you will have realized, whenever they say grace, what they're saying is you've got to use your psychic abilities, right? Because with grace, you can complete the Philosopher's Stone. With grace, you can achieve eternal life, right? So that's a big jump. But just remember, whenever they're saying with grace, that's what they're talking about. While Spagyrics is, by all appearances, a modest handbook, a cookbook which some have even said, using a term that many seem to diminish the work, until you accurately have to do the cooking, until you actually have to engage in the work. Then do you come to appreciate the scope and depth of this remarkable text. You won't find much discussion of the spiritual or inner work involved in alchemy in this book, no real in-depth discussion of higher alchemical practices, and this is perhaps as it should be, as these practices are based on intuition and cannot be taught through books. From discussions I've had with Manfred, I believe he would concur with the notion that if an individual would work within his or her own spiritual tradition, initiation would come. Although he has never very specific about the spiritual aspects of alchemy, he did urge one to a consideration of purpose as well as ethics. He would often say that the work is karmically secure if it is dedicated towards the healing in particular and in helping others in general. When he wrote this book, he wrote it with the mind and heart of a healer. This comes across very clearly in the book itself, asks to be read with such a mind that and such a heart. Now in 2007, we have a new edition for which I was delighted to assist in freshening the reproduction of the engravings from the alchemical literature. The illustrations and diagrams have been left as originally rendered by Manfred Eunice, and his hand drawn symbols remain in the chapter about the alchemical signs and symbols, along with the new index to the content. Content. I think that this new edition is a balance of beauty and meaning and history, serving well the purpose of the work at hand to provide a handbook to the alchemical work with plants. This work is not to be followed slavishly, but to be listened to, experienced, experimented with. As gold tried in the fire remains pure gold, so with this work, Manfred Eunice, having been engaged in alchemical research and experimentation, I can attest that it all works and that all you need to do can be found within these pages. The only thing missing is the agent to do the work, the heart, the mind, the hands, to bring it all to completion. The door to alchemy is literally in your hand. So pick up this book if you want to know the first secrets, the minor circulation, if you want to try something like the major circulation, which is the Philosopher's Stone. Do you have that passage about the plants pulled up by, can't believe I blank on his name, Paracelsus von Hohenheim? I think you're muted. I see your lips moving, but oh, there you go.
Yeah, thanks. Okay.
Thanks, guys. Make sure to share this out to everybody. Maybe put it out there in your Instagram too as well. Copy that link and share it with your friends. Let's get some eyes on Alchemy Monday. I got to get a TikTok account because I got videos, and these videos are great content for TikTok, especially since they don't have a lot of Soxalate content on TikTok. So.
Okay, so let me share my screen. All right, here we go. Okay, so last time, I think we just did the preface. So
he held his tongue on the preface.
Yeah, he was very polite, very cordial.
Very much.
All right. Chapter 1. I, Philippus Theophrastus Paracelsus Bombast. That can't be for real.
That's his name.
Okay. Say that by divine grace, many ways have been sought to the tincture of the philosophers, which finally all came to the same scope and end. Hermes Trismegistus, the Egyptian, approached this task in his own method. Oris, the Greek, observed the same process. Halley, the Arabian, remained firm in his order, but Albertus Magnus, the German, followed also a lengthy process. Each one of these advanced in proportion to his own method. Nevertheless, they all arrive at one and the same end, at a long life, so much desired by the philosophers, and also at an honorable sustenance and means of preserving that life in this valley of misery. Now at this time I, Theophrastus Paracelsus Bombast, monarch of the Arcana, am endowed by God with special gifts for this end, that every searcher after this supreme philosophic work may be forced to imitate and to follow me, be he Italian, Pole, Gaul, German, or whatsoever, or whosoever he be. Come hither after me, all you philosophers, astronomers, and Spagyrics, of however lofty a name ye may be. I will show and open to you alchemists and doctors who are exalted by me with the most consummate labors, this corporeal regeneration. I will teach you the tincture, the arcanum, the quintessence, wherein lie hid the foundations of all mysteries and of all works. For every person may and ought to believe in another only in those matters which he has tried by fire. If any one shall have brought forward anything contrary to this method of experimentation in the spagyric art or in medicine, there is no reason for your belief in him, since experimentally through the agency of fire, the true is separated from the false. The light of nature indeed is created in this way, that by means thereof the proof or trial of everything may appear, but only to those who walk in this light. With this light we will teach by the very best methods of demonstration that all those who before me have approached this so difficult province with their own fancies and acute speculations have, to their own loss, incurred the danger of their foolishness, on which account, from my standpoint, many rustics have been ennobled, but on the other hand, through the speculative and opinionative art of these many nobles have been changed into clowns, and since they carried golden mountains in their head before they had put their hand to the fire. First of all, then, there must be learnt digestions, distillations, sublimations, reverberations, extractions, solutions, coagulations, fermentations, fixations, and every instrument which is requisite for this work must be mastered by experience, such as glass vessels, curcubites, circulators, vessels of Hermes, earthen vessels, baths, blast furnaces, reverberatories, and instruments of like kind, also marble, coals, and tongs. Thus at length you will be able to profit in alchemy and in medicine. But so long as relying on fancy and opinion you cleave to your fictitious books, you are fitted and predestined for no one of these things. You're muted now, Headless.
Thank you. So he's talking about these different laboratory pieces of equipment. So what we're talking about with some of the stuff, right? So this would be an alcohol train right in there. You can see it, right? So what you're doing there is you're heating up the alcohol and the stuff that you fermented. It goes down that long tube that has the cooling water around it, and then the alcohol condenses back down, and then you can collect it in this little apparatus down at the bottom, right? So that would be part of the extraction using fermentation. The oil is carried over with the alcohol, right? So then you have to reduce the alcohol down and separate out the oil from the alcohol. And that's kind of complex because you really don't want to burn the oil, right? Which is why I got the vacuum, because with the vacuum, you're not going to be burning the oil. But let me see here. There's a couple other ones. He didn't. Oh, here's an old fractioning flask, right? So each one of those stages that you see in there would be
Wait, up a little bit. Okay.
Right. So each one of those stages in there that you see would be a different temperature for the material inside of that retort, right? So inside the retort, all these different things are going to separate out at the different temperatures, and that's why you see the pelicans sort of angled in those ways, right? That's the old way of doing it. Now you would have to have all of this stuff just to have something like a soxolite, right? So all of those things would have to be made by hand. You'd have to know how to blow glass. You'd have to know how to do all of that stuff and get it just perfect so that you could then use that in your art. It was very expensive. Only the elites had access to doing alchemy back in the day. I mean, could you imagine trying to build something like that? Kind of ridiculous. But at the same time, these are the processes that they use to separate out all of these little things from other little things and to create something new with it. And all of chemistry came from that. So it was a very, very thankless task. And I'm going to play my video of my attempt at making tea. This is how to make the most complex cup of tea you will ever make. So I didn't have any alcohol, I didn't have any herbs, but what I did have was a tea bag. And the tea bag goes in the thimble spot here. All right, so this thing is going to start to collect some of the condensing water from up here in the condenser. All right, so as it comes up, it condenses back down through the running water. All right, cools off, drips back down, and fills up this loop of Henle structure. This is like what's in your kidneys, only on a microscopic scale. So this loop right here is going to fill up with hot water. And that hot water is going to turn this tea into something usable. Now, it keeps the temperature constant up here at a much lower temperature than down here. Now, normally, you don't want to have it boiling like this, but it's just tea. It's just tea. All right, so the water is flowing up here, coming around, back down, hitting the tea bag. Now that tea bag is going to start filling up this loop until it reaches the top, full of water, and then it's going to go back down into here. So the tea is going to collect down here at the bottom. Since it's so huge, it takes forever to heat up and start moving around. Now I got this little fish tank pump right here that's keeping this cold water in the worm. And that worm is cooling down all that evaporating water so it doesn't come out up here in Leo. You don't want it to come out in Leo. You want it to cool down before it hits that fire sign and escapes the apparatus. So, this is what we got going on Alchemy Monday. Okay. All right. So, it gets pretty dramatic when that loop fills up with the material as it's extracting from whatever herbs that you've got in that thimble spot, right? So, all of that stuff gets siphoned through the action of the water or the material, the solvent, going back down into the flask in the bottom. So it sucks all of that down with it. So it's bringing the maximum amount of material along with it through that loop once that suction starts as it crests the top of it. So as the water is boiling, it's filling up that space in there that they call the thimble, where you put your herbs inside of an unbleached filter paper, right? The alcohol goes through that filter paper, goes through your herb, and then it fills up that loop and then takes it right back down into the bottom. And you do several dozen circulations like that, right? So that it, remains at a constant temperature. It's not burning your material, and it's having a very even process to go through. But that's how the soxolite works. And yeah, that's what I got. Now, as I was sitting down to start the episode, I was hoping that the tea would be done by the time it was over, but it didn't have the right tubing. So once I sat down, the tubing that you saw going back into the water dish that had the pump in it shot out and sprayed water all over my power strip. But luckily, nothing shorted out and everything was okay. So it was a miracle.
So usually you would have alcohol in there instead of water.
Right. Ethyl alcohol, not wood alcohol, ethyl alcohol. And the ethyl alcohol, as close to purity as possible, has a extreme hydrophilic state. So as you've done the distillations of the alcohol over and over and over again until you've got it as pure as possible, it sucks the moisture out of the air. So you want to have as little moisture inside of there as possible so that you don't get a lot of water in with your alcohol, and it has the maximum possible extraction. So you have to use the purest alcohol, and in the lesser circulation, you have to create the alcohol from the plant itself, right? So you've got to ferment the plant and take all of the sugary substance that gets consumed by your yeast, turn that into alcohol, keep it in a sealed container, obviously. And then you got to distill it. And so unless you have a massive amount of material that you're distilling from or that you're fermenting, you're not going to get a lot of alcohol because each and every one of the plants has a different sugar content, right? So if you're talking about grasses, they're going to have a much lower sugar content than, let's say, sugar cane. Right. So you're going to have to ferment a lot more of that grass to get a lot of the alcohol out, which can then be used to pull out the essential oils from that same plant in, different quantities. So it's a process, but once you've got that lesser circulation or the plant stone, you can immediately combine that plant stone with a new sample from the plant that it came from and have total extraction within seconds, supposedly. I've never completed the lesser circulation, but we're on the path. So that's what they're talking about in Spagyrics. That's what they're talking about in Alchemical Handbook, Frater Albertus. So we're going to get this thing done. It's going to take a while, but we're going to get there. Pretty soon, I'm going to have to get a lot more plant material so that I can start fermenting it. I can start working with other alcohols and stuff like that. And we'll go over how that process works as well. But basically, that worm in there is what's used in the alcohol process too. They've got the alcohol train variety. You've got the oil variety. I've already got the oil extractor. I know how to use that one as well. So we're going to be doing oil extractions and other things along the path. And I'm going to be videotaping it as we go and talking a little bit more about the spiritual practices involved in committing yourself to alchemy and following the path of nature. So hopefully you guys enjoy. Do you have anything else, Eros?
For that fermentation process, I know we aren't there yet, and so maybe you don't know your plan yet. Is it going to be important to have plants from a certain planetary hour?
Exactly. You're going to want to harvest all of the plants at a specific planetary hour based upon how much, because a lot of the planetary hour stuff when it comes to harvesting plants has to do with the water content of the plant. So as the plant is sitting there all day, right, you're going to have varying degrees of water content within that plant at different times of the day. Obviously, at noon, you would have the lowest water content. During the night, you're going to have the highest water content. So when you're harvesting the plant at the special hour that you want it, harvested, you're going to have a certain amount of water content coming along with those plants as well. And when we get into that, I think it'll be, a lot clearer how that process works. But this is where you come in because as we go through the planetary hours and stuff, we can describe how that stuff works, especially when it comes to astrology, and also talking about latitude lines and how that plays into astrology as well. So these are important factors once we get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. If you guys have ever made, white lightning or, moonshine before, you know how much fun this part is, because it is fun making, really strong booze. You can do it with corn. Corn is usually used, but you can use any sort of plant, because any plant has sugar in it. That's part of ATP. That's part of the process of how these plants make energy for themselves. And that's also what we do in sort of a more animalistic way. So they've got a different way of metabolizing sugars and creating sugars using photosynthesis. And we'll definitely get into that process as well, because we're talking about the sun bringing life to the planet, right? There's nothing more alchemical than the sun bringing life to the planet. So we'll definitely get into that a lot more. But thank you for joining us again on another Alchemy Monday. Next time we'll go into some other apparatus stuff, some other laboratory stuff, and a lot more reading. So definitely share this around, and we'll see you again next time. Oh, tell them where they can find you.
You can find me on Twitter at Eros to Ethos and YouTube at Eros Up.
Thank you guys, and we'll see you again next Alchemy Monday.
Thanks, everyone.